Another week of Overwatch League action is over, and with it being the last chance teams had to affect their seedings ahead of a Summer Showdown Tournament next weekend, we certainly got our fair share of entertaining upsets and dominant sweeps. Rather than go through all the games individually though, today I thought that I'd instead discuss my 4 takeaways from the past week of play to really focus in on the teams and matches that stood out to me personally, so be sure to let me know if you like this new approach or not. Starting us off then, my first key takeaway from week 21 of the Overwatch League is the confirmation of both the Shanghai Dragons and the San Francisco Shock as the clear and dominant number 1 teams of their respective regions. Heading into this past week, most people had a pretty good idea that the Dragons and Shock were the best teams in Asia and North America, but week 21 saw both sides face interesting challenges that would really test whether this statement was true. Shanghai was set to tackle a Seoul team that, although unreliable, had caused them some problems in the past, taking the Dragons the distance in their last 2 meetings. They also had to go up against a Spark side on Sunday, who looked to be full of confidence after upgrading their roster and enjoying 2 strong performances against the Charge and Excelsior the week prior. Over in North America, San Francisco was scheduled to play arguably their toughest opponent to date, the Philadelphia Fusion, who were not only undefeated in June, but had only 1 regular season loss to their name. So how did these 2 teams fare? Both dispatched their opposition in convincing and dominant fashion. Shanghai dropped only 1 map in their 3-1 victory over the Dynasty, but in the maps that they won, it wasn't really close. Likewise, they brushed the Spark aside 3-0 without even breaking a sweat. The Shock meanwhile controlled their series over the Fusion without ever looking under any serious threat, eventually winning it 3-0, disappointing those of us who had hyped up this series and were looking forward to a competitive contest. With such one-sided victories over decent opponents, we can be left in no doubt that these are the best 2 teams in their respective regions, as well as in the league as a whole. It's hard to think of teams that can really compete with them at the moment. Perhaps the Charge in Asia or Florida in NA, but to be honest it really doesn't look close. There's only one conclusion we can come to at this moment in time. Not only will both of these sides be overwhelming favourites of the Summer Showdown next weekend, but right now it looks to be in a 2-horse race for the Overwatch League title itself come the end of the season. The second takeaway I want to discuss involves one of the matchups I briefly touched on above, as I now want to talk about the Hangzhou Spark. As I already suggested, the Spark looks to be on a great trajectory after their week 20 matches against Guangzhou and New York. Bolstered by the additions of Architect on the DPS line and QQ at off-tank, Hangzhou had just fallen short of the Charge in 5 maps, after edging out New York in 5 maps as well the day before. By no means was it a complete performance, as there were clearly some times when their coordination was a little lacking, but for a roster that had only had a couple of weeks to develop synergy with its newest recruits, this looks to be a really promising start against 2 of the stronger teams in the APAC region. To start this past weekend, they played the London Spitfire on Saturday, before having a tough test scheduled against Shanghai on Sunday. Many, including myself, expected them to build upon their impressive displays the week before to get a win over the Spitfire and build up momentum towards their contest against the Dragons ahead of the Summer Showdown. This thought, however, was completely derailed when the Spark were 3-0'd by London. Godsby and Architect had a far less impactful series, with their counterpart Glister completely outshining them, whilst at the same time, highly completely dominated Bebe in the Baptiste duel. I want to take nothing away from the Spitfire, who were fantastic and really highlighted their recent improvement, with their triumph here coming on the back of a sustained period of team development and increasing competitiveness against the top teams. For Hangzhou though, this loss certainly suggests that the team still has a lot to do before they can reach their full potential. Moving away from Ash and Tracer of the week before, Godsby and Architect looked a little uncomfortable and were often caught out of position either on Echo or Widowmaker. I thought the tank line was actually alright, but the support pairing of Bebe and Mika definitely struggled, being the key difference for me between the Spitfire and the Spark. With a 3-0 loss to London, however, it was pretty obvious how the team was faring against the Dragons, and a convincing 3-0 defeat to them ended a humbling 2-loss week, where the Spark went 0-6 in maps. By no means is it the end of the world for the Spark, but this past week should have highlighted areas that they need to work on moving forward, as success with their improved roster will only come with time and development, and perhaps take a little longer than some of us had previously expected and anticipated. The third takeaway I have to discuss is one that I wasn't expecting at all heading into week 21, as it involves Boston's failure to qualify for the Summer Showdown Tournament after their 3-1 defeat last night to the Washington Justice. Over the past month, the Boston Uprising have been a team that personally I've given a lot of credit to for their improvement. It all started in the run-up to the main melee as the Uprising overcame the Gladiators in an impressive upset victory before taking Paris to 5 maps in their knockout match against one another. A big part of this improvement followed the signing of Punk onto the roster at off-tank, who galvanised the tank line alongside Fusions, all the while we were seeing improved performances from Colourhex in assisting his DPS partner Jerry. To further suggest that Boston were on a positive trend, they again took the Eternal to 5 maps in week 19, this time when Sparkle was making his debut for Paris. Everything seemed to be going well for Boston, and although they were 3-0'd by Philly the following week, it was hardly anything for people to be concerned by. Week 21, however, has ended up being an entirely different story. To round out their Summer Showdown qualification matches, the Uprising were beaten 3-0 by Vancouver before taking the surprising L to Washington 3-1 in the qualification match, eliminating them from the Summer Showdown. It really feels like a case of one step forward, two steps back for Boston, with all their recent progress being eliminated by a rather ugly loss to the universally recognised worst team in the league heading into this past weekend. I can forgive them for their loss to the Titans, as they themselves enjoyed a great month of June, but saw them earn the 4th seed for the Summer Showdown. Washington, however, are an entirely different story. The Justice had one plan: Tuba farm ult on Genji, Aim God farm ult on Ana, then combine them into a Nano Blade to wipe the Uprising and win the teamfights. It was astonishing how successfully Washington were able to pull off this strategy, with even the occasional stun onto Tuba not preventing his success. With the Genji buffs coming into effect last week, and with some of the teams using him regularly throughout the weekend, you would have expected Boston to at least have a plan to deal with the enemy Nano Blade. But no, they just looked helpless. And with that defeat, all their recent progress has seemingly become undone, and if it hasn't already, it confirms the season as another complete write-off for Boston. Clearly coaching is a major issue of this team, and until it is sorted, the Uprising will continue to be consistently sitting at the bottom of the league. But this is something we've been saying for almost 2 years now, so I guess nothing's going to change. To end this video on a better note though, I thought my final takeaway from the weekend would discuss the now revealed brackets for the Summer Showdown, now that all the seedings have been handed out and the higher seeds have picked their opponents for the opening rounds. Let's start in the APAC region, where the final standings after all the qualifiers ended look like this. With Shanghai claiming the first seed, they secured a bye for semi-finals, with Guangzhou and New York getting their choice of the 5 to 7 teams after earning the second and third seeds themselves. Unsurprisingly, the Charge opted to face the Hunters, who have clearly been the weakest performers in the APAC region this year. The Excelsior though did surprise me with their pick of the Spark over the Dynasty. This was a little odd, as they recently smashed Seoul whilst actually losing to Hangzhou, but maybe because of the Dynasty's unknowns from week to week and the Spark's poor last weekend, they felt more comfortable going up against Hangzhou. This therefore left the final matchup as the London Spitfire against the Seoul Dynasty, which on paper has several great storylines, and it's definitely the standout of the APAC quarterfinals, especially as it's their first meeting this season. But this is something I'll go into more detail about when discussing my APAC Summer Showdown predictions in a preview video later this week. On the NA side of things, there were a few surprises when it came to the final seedings, with the June standings at the end of proceedings looking like this. Atlanta's win over Vancouver earned them the 2nd seed overall, but the bigger surprise was the Titans themselves, who held on to the 4th seed, earning them a bye to the quarterfinals. This is a fabulous feat for them, considering where they were a month ago. That really shows the development that their new roster has made. With Atlanta and Vancouver getting these byes though, this has placed some very strong teams like the Mayhem and Valiant into the earlier rounds, so let's see how the initial NA bracket looks. Of course, we know about Boston's loss to Washington in the qualifier to start off the Summer Showdown, so this meant we could learn right away who was choosing who for the knockouts. Surprisingly, the 5th seeded LA Valiant didn't pick the 13th seeded Justice, and instead they opted to go with the Toronto Defiant. Definitely a choice that I wasn't expecting, but their coach Packing 10 did simply explain that they just thought the Defiant were bad, and if they liked the matchup, I can't really say this is the wrong decision at this moment in time. This pick, however, made things quite easy for the 6th seeded LA Gladiators, who gladly wasted no time in choosing the Washington Justice for their own knockout series. The Mayhem are the team that held the 7th seed, and they were given the choice of the 2 Texas sides. On paper, this for me anyway would have been quite a hard thing to decide, but in the end Florida decided to go for another match against the Outlaws. This was definitely an interesting choice, considering that just this past week, the Mayhem suffered a bit of a scare when playing Houston, almost being reverse swept despite having a strong start. That said, with Dallas enjoying a strong bounce back display against Toronto, not forgetting also that Decay should return to the starting lineup, it makes sense that Florida wanted to deal with a team that they already knew something about. That of course meant that the final match for knockouts would see the Paris Eternal go up against the Dallas Fuel, a match that is going to see nearly all the previews and the hype surround the battle of their DPS superstars, Sparkle and Decay, making it a series I'm already getting excited for. As I mentioned a minute ago, like the APAC region, I'll also be making an NA preview and predictions video for the Summer Showdown later this week, but in the meantime be sure to let me know down in the comments below who your early predictions are on. For now though, that's all I've got to say on week 21's Overwatch League action, so if you have reached the end of the video then I'd like to thank you for watching. Aside from the Summer Showdown prediction videos, I will at last be posting the promised Tier 2 video tomorrow, so if you enjoyed and don't want to miss out, then please be sure to like and subscribe or follow me on my Twitter or Discord. Until then however, stay safe and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.